as engineers, how do we prepare for those potentially unstable life cycles, and how do we predict the trend's duration if possible?
I'd like to follow up on that part.
Sure.
Because trend cycles are getting shorter, how effective do you think trend watching is?
Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to the Click Andy podcast. I am one of your two hosts, Calvin, and I'm here with my friend, Keisha.
Hi everyone, my name is Nakisha Udra Fatma. I'm from Industrial Engineering, and today we're going to have a talk with Pandi about our last class for Engineering Concept for Civilization.
So the topic that we're gonna have today is basically about strategic management system. We have prepared a couple of questions each for this podcast, and we will have Paandi answer those questions, and we will converse along and talk about the topic as well as engineering itself. Yeah. So I think the system will go, I will ask the question first, and then Keisha will ask the next question, so on and so forth. If there are additional questions, we can converse with each other.
Definitely.
Okay. So I'll start with the first question. As we can see in strategic management system, we always start with trend watching, which is essentially noticing what's trending right now, what's new, and what looks like it's gonna stay. But those trends seem to have different life cycles. Some trends last longer than they predicted as they should be, others last ridiculously quickly. As engineers, how do we prepare for those potentially unstable life cycles, and how do we predict the trend's duration if possible?
Thank you so much. I think if you look at the trends at the moment, or whatever subjects or a field, the trend is, in my opinion, because I'm a lot older than you, is now a lot shorter than what I experienced back then. So everything is shorter and change rapidly. So that's actually the fact that we engineers should really understand. So the first thing is that, especially for older engineers like me, we really need to understand that the world is changing. The way people do things also different now. Also, the trends are changing rapidly. That is the first thing that we really need to understand, which means that we really need to adapt our strategy, how to observe the trend. 10 years ago, the way we observe the trend was different from the way we should do it now, right?
Yeah.
Because we should anticipate that, okay, this trend might not last as long as I imagine, right? So meaning that the understanding that the trend is probably or most likely shorter is actually the first understanding that we should have. The second, I think we really need to pay attention to data. We cannot really predict something without understanding the data, right?
Oh, yeah.
So sometimes we use our imagination or feeling that we say it. Nowadays, we can no longer do that because everything has to be based on data. 10 years ago, I thought this is impossible to suppose something to happen, but now it is possible.
Yeah.
Right? So it means that first, we just need to understand first that the trend can change rapidly. Second, it has to be based on data. So observing based on data and then formulating it and to study the trend, that is actually the best way because we are engineers, right?
I'd like to follow up on that part.
Sure.
Because trend cycles are getting shorter, how effective do you think trend watching is as a way to strategically manage something?
Right. In my opinion, trend watching is now even more important because back then, if you watch the trend, for example, we believe this trend will last like for 2-3 years back then, but now this can be different, right?
Yeah.
So because the changes are rapid, so the watch of the trend or the trend watching now becomes even more important. So it means that if we have something that we have done based on certain trend, at the same time we really need to watch the trend carefully, and then based on that trend watching, we have to be ready to change quickly if the trend suggests us to do so.
Since after we've done the trend watching part, the next most natural step of the process would be to create essentially an analysis.
Okay.
One of the most commonly used analysis methods is using the SWOT analysis.
Yeah.
However, I still feel like there are still potential problems or mistakes that we could potentially create when making a SWOT analysis. Some mistakes that we might not notice, but is actually crucial. How do we tackle them if we do encounter those sort of mistakes, and how do we prepare in order to not make those mistakes?
SWOT, by the way, is very old approach, but still relevant, because whatever our project is, whatever we face, we still need to think about the strength that we have, the weakness that we have, and then opportunities and so threat. Right. So all the four, I think we still need them and still relevant. The issue is that it is not easy anymore to define what's the threat, what opportunities we have. The strength we can probably see our strength, right? Because this is quite objective. But when it comes to opportunities and threat, for example, it is not as easy as, once again, I would like to say 10 or 20 years ago. So, for example, Bluebird, the taxi.
The taxi company?
The taxi companies. What I thought, let's say 20 years ago, I thought the threat for taxi companies will be another taxi companies. Not the case. The threat for taxi companies is usually online Gojek or
Gojek,
online
Grab.
transportation and Grab. So we imagined back then, for example, if there's another company as big as Bluebird, for example, with a lot of cars and a lot of employees and big buildings, that will be a threat for them. But the fact, it is not the threat. The threat is actually a company with no single car and no single motorbike, but they become the threat. So I think, in my opinion now, the SWOT are still there, but we just need to be more careful now to identify what threat do we have now. And opportunities also, once again. Opportunities, for example. Like, we know that, okay, talking about GoFood now, for example. It's okay to sebut merek di sini. We are not endorsing.
It's not
Gojek
sponsored.
anyway. It's not sponsored. Just give an example.
Although if it's sponsored, we'd be glad to have it.
Why not? So, for example, when I was as young as you, whenever I was hungry, I thought about eating it, to eat somewhere. If I don't have time to go there and I don't have my motorbike with me, I'll ask my friend to do it. Right? So, a hungry person, somebody who's selling food, and somebody who's delivering food. Three components. We had it already back in 1990s, those three components, but it didn't become business. But nowadays, it becomes Gojek, GoFood, right? You get my point, So the opportunities was actually there back then, but we were not sensitive enough at the time to see it as an opportunity. So now what before was not opportunity, now become opportunity.
I see.
So the SWOT are same, but then we have to be very careful to really define what are opportunities, what new opportunities we have, and what threat we have. Those are at least two things. Be more sensitive and be more creative in seeing things.
So the opportunities are already there, but we still have to dive deeper into it, essentially.
Right.
So is that where trend watching comes in, like to see the opportunities we have?
That's very true. That's very true. So the trend watching that I just said earlier, also including to see the opportunities. Even out of something that we didn't even think about as an opportunity before. Okay, this is probably a bad example. Okay, companies that help you to membuat skripsi.
Okay, I saw that.
The companies that help you to finish your assignments. Tugas,
Yeah,
joki,
yes.
like joki tugas, joki skripsi. This is not endorsement, so I hate that. I don't like that. But the thing is that people really see this as an opportunity, and then it becomes a business.
So as engineers, is there like certain things in the trends or in the daily life that we have to look out for?
Yes, I think so. So as an engineer, the principle is that we are here to help people to solve their problems, especially their daily problems, right?
Yeah.
So of course, sometimes we think about something really big and grand, but in reality, solving real problems in daily life actually the sources of opportunities. Let me just once again refer to Gojek. Okay, Gojek becomes a really big company now, but what they solve is actually daily problems.
That's right.
It is not like a rocket science kind of thing, right? So Mas Nadim back then, he had problems with Ojek because not reliable. It is not very easy to get a reliable driver. That's sort of problems that he was facing at the time. Now, why don't I do something to solve my own problems, which he believed also everybody else's problem. So solving daily problems is actually one of the very important keys to bring this issue into opportunities and then business and then so on and so forth.
As engineers, just like before, when we are creating this SWOT analysis and when we are carrying it out, when we are executing this sort of plan or program that we already have strategically managed, sometimes when creating the vision and mission, it will be different when we are carrying it out midway. So for example, when we are in the middle of our project, suddenly our vision changes. It's not gonna stay the same. Just like when we are a child, our dream was to become this, our profession is this, but when we grow up, it turns out to be different, right? So how do we prepare for that kind of vision change? How do we plan for it?
Thank you so much. This is very important. As I said earlier, the world is evolving a lot quicker than, let's say, 10, 20 years ago. So meaning that it is acceptable to see that things that we plan will need to be changed midways that you mentioned, right? So I think we just have first to have the understanding about this. So whatever you plan, you just have to be ready. This might change along the way because that is how the world works, right? So meaning that even that you have something really good and fixed in your mind, just give some space over there that I might change it along the way or in midways. That's the first principle. Second, adaptive. Because, okay, we keep saying this actually back in 80s, 70s or 90s. We just have to be adaptive. Now that advice cannot be truer. It is really, really true that we just have to be adaptive. So for example, even like me as a professor, as a lecturer, I have the plan for teaching for one semester. But along the way, something happened. Like there's a new cases, new trends, new happenings, new occurrence. So I really need to change the way I teach. The case that I presented in the class, that is a small example. So that also is the case with other bigger projects. So how do we do this? First, we don't stick to basically procedure, but what we have to uphold onto is the vision, the bigger vision and values. Your example is very good. Like when I was a kid, I wanted to be a doctor, and then I changed, and then lawyer, and then change again. So a profession in that case, in my opinion, is not the value. The value is for you to be, for example, to be able to help people.
Oh, okay.
To be able to be, menebar manfaat in other language, right? Yeah. So that value is something you need to uphold onto, not the procedure.
Okay.
You get my point? Eh?
Yeah.
So to become a doctor is good, but that is not the value that you should uphold onto, like fixed things. But how to become someone that will be so useful for the society, that is something you should hit. And then along the way, you will accept the fact that, okay, I need to change my profession, I need to change my cita-cita, and then you will not be frustrated by that.
Oh yeah.
Because you never attach your life into that single profession. But what you attach your life to is actually the value, whom you want to be in the future. I think engineers are also the same. because basically we want to be useful, we want to help the society, right?
Yeah.
So whatever the way is, meaning that whatever the project that we can do to do that, we can adapt, to adjust.
Because we already have our own core values.
Exactly.
Okay.
Core values is very important. Yeah.
That helps really a lot.
Right.
Speaking about values,
Yeah.
how do we maintain like being the top of the competitors?
Right.
Because there's a lot of engineers right now, and there are a lot of problems to solve. But sometimes the case is it's not necessarily we have to be. Well, you know, when companies are picking out engineers, they aren't really picking out who wants to be the most useful or who wants to be the best or the kindest to people. They're picking out the ones that are more efficient, effective, cheap maybe. So how do we maintain our values in a world that is so competitive?
I have to be honest here, that it is not easy. You know, I imagine, once again, I will always say this, 10, 20 years ago, the competition was not that tough. So once you're good in one particular thing, maybe you can stay there like 5, 10, 20 years. Because not many people would jump into your field of expertise. But now it's a different story. Why? First, because anybody can learn anything, anywhere, at any time.
Yeah.
Right? Even if you're, for example, you're students of Fakultas Hukum or Law, you can still learn how to code using Python.
Yep.
Right? I mean, only to pay 100,000 rupiah for a short course in internet, for example, you can do it, right? Like me, I'm a geospatial engineer. I can you know, basically utilize satellite images to basically observe the environment, for example. But nowadays, even if you're not from geodetic engineering and you're not from geodetic engineering, you can do also the same, because the satellite imageries are now free, and you can download and you can learn how to process that. So you can do exactly just what geospatial engineers do. So first, the way we learn things now different. It is a lot easier for us now to learn. So meaning that the competition is tougher and tougher. Now, my advice is that, in my opinion, still, that if you have the core values, you'll be safer for the long term. Okay. Once again, it is not the procedure, it is not the field of work that you should hit, but the values. For example, whatever project that we do, I will give more to my clients. That's value. I will provide my clients with like best quality that I can. I will add values, I will add function, all of those kind. That's value, right? So it doesn't matter you're a contractor or you're a environmental engineers, whatever. So giving more to the clients is the value they should keep. With that, even though the competitors are there outside, you will still find your way. Because believe me, even though, as you said earlier, sometimes people like instant thing.
Yes.
Whatever cheap, they like it, right?
Yeah.
But you will still find people or group of people who value the quality. So I think, in my opinion, you still have to have this core value very strong for a long term. But at the same time, I want to be also pragmatic here. You will also have to, trend watching is very important here, right? So if the trend watching, meaning that, okay, you combine the value that you uphold onto, and then the way you satisfy the society based on the trend that they want to follow. I know that this is not easy, but let us just compare this. If you pay attention only to the trend without strong core values, right? So you will not be able to give more to your clients. Compared with if you have the strong core values, but you're adaptive enough to see the trends, and then you adjust along the way, right? So you uphold your core values, but then you're also adaptive enough to see the trends and to see what people want. And then that way you can basically combine those those two things, to satisfying the trends or following the trends and still keeping the core values, which in my opinion, once again, it is not that easy, but I have a strong belief that if you can provide others with additional values or stronger values, you'll be able to even influence them. So instead of you following the trend, you can impose a new trend to other people.
Yeah.
Like what I said in the class, for example, if a client wants you to, okay, please build me a building using these materials. If you have a very strong understanding about materials, you can say, Pak or Bu, this is good, but if you see other options like this, I'll explain to you why this can be a lot better than what you have now. So good understanding, good values can even influence the trend. That's how I see it.
Pak, speaking about maintaining our core values, we can't be an engineer without talking about ethics, right? And this is sort of also related to the topic that we've previously had. We have, core values. Even though there's competition, we have to maintain our core values. How about when we talk about something that is more ethically gray, something that is also difficult? For example, when we are engineers, we're going to be having like a lot of ethical problems in our career. For example, when we want to build like a huge industrial complex, for example, that could potentially ruin and have like a huge negative environmental impact. But at the same time, it could also get the economy rolling. It could feed a lot of families. It could give them a lot of money and have them live a more stable life. How do we balance that while maintaining our core principles, sort of?
This is very important. We have a lot of examples of that recently. The first thing, in my opinion, is that we just have to communicate our core values that you cannot compromise. Okay, you just have to have those values. What values that you cannot compromise. Jadi kalau saya udah bilang gini tentang ini, harus kayak gini.
Oh yeah.
Okay, you just have to have, and then you have to define which values and what values that fall into that category. Values that you cannot compromise. Maybe it relates to religion, probably your belief. Second relates to the ethics that we have as engineers in Indonesia. We have this code and ethics, right? So meaning that we have to refer to that. We cannot compromise that. Okay. So first, communicate the core values that you cannot compromise. That's first thing. Second, and then based on that core values, you can actually help people to adjust and to maybe modify their plan, because first probably they have the plan, they offer it to you, right?
Yeah.
So based on the core values that you have, that you believe so, you can help them to adjust. So instead of harming the environment, for example, because who knows, that happens actually because they just don't understand, right? Not because they are bad people, right? Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Some are. Not necessarily that they do something because they are bad, probably because they just don't understand. So imagine if you have the core values very strong, you communicate them, and then you have very good understanding about the scientific aspects of it. And then I believe using those two power, you can help them actually to adjust the plan, to change the procedure and everything in such a way that still uphold the good values and also provide benefit. Because most of the time they think that if we follow all the procedures, protect the environment and things like that, it's not going to be economical. It is not going to be profitable for us. This kind of values, right? The thing is that true, or they just don't understand that? The complexity and the science behind it. In my opinion, we have to imagine the other way around. So they do it, they propose it because they just don't know. They just don't know, or they don't have enough knowledge about that. Why don't we serve as a parties who provide them with those two, good values and good understanding with that, and then we can help them to do so. That's in an ideal world.
Yeah,
I know
that's an
also,
ideal
I
world.
know it is not always like that, there is always a case where people are just bad.
Yeah.
Right? People are just bad. They just want profit.
Yeah.
If that is the case, in my opinion, I would like to suggest you to go back to the core values that you uphold on to. You don't play, or you don't take part in that kind of project. That's basically my advice.
I feel like that will be very relevant in recent cases.
Yes, Raja Ampat.
Yes, exactly.
Why don't we talk a little bit about it, just to give some real cases. I'm not in a position to understand everything about Raja Ampat,
yes,
but at least what we know, what we understand now from the news is that they have the nickel mining in that island. Right? So we can see it from different perspectives. I'm teaching coastal zone management in geodetic engineering, so I'll see it from there. First, we talk about small islands. So those islands actually qualify to be called small islands because less than 2,000 kilometers square. So if it is small island, meaning that they will fall within the regulation of how we should utilize and manage coastal areas and small islands. Mining is not one of them. Mining is not one of the way, or one of the thing that we can do actually in the small. That is one thing. Second, now with regards to my expertise, once again, remote sensing, for example, like using satellite images. So technically speaking, we actually can observe and monitor the land, the island, what happens there, and how rapid the development is. Because if you use the satellite images from the sky, for example, this is like the camera. Okay, when you pass by my house, you take the picture every single day. You'll be able to observe the change in my house, right?
Tiny changes.
Tiny changes.
Yeah.
So it is actually exactly the same with the satellite images. So they can take pictures of the same location. Maybe not every day now. It is like hours now.
Oh, okay.
The resolution is hours.
So it's even more advanced, yeah.
More advanced. So meaning that that's the what we call it a temporal resolution.
Oh,
we also think about the spatial resolution, right? How detailed the satellite images can observe from the sky. Now the best thing is 30 centimeters by 30 centimeters. It can see. Like my bag, for example, if it is observed from the sky by satellite, they can notice that.
Oh, okay.
See now the how advanced it is. So meaning that technically speaking, we can actually observe what happens in any place on location on Earth using satellite images, right?
Yeah.
So if we really use that satellite images, the technology, we can tell actually this week they do the mining and they cause this large amount of areas or something like that. So we can actually do that. So the technology is there, but why it still happen? Right?
Yeah.
So here is now we understand better the technology cannot stay alone. It has to be combined with good intention, good management. Combining this technology with good vision and mission of an engineer. If you don't have the mission to save the environment, even though you have the technology, it will mean nothing.
Speaking of vision and missions, what do you think is, firstly, how is it important for an engineer, but also how do we define what's a good vision and mission? Because speaking of Raja Ampat, maybe their vision and mission is to utilize the island for, other types of objectives.
Right. This is very, very, very interesting questions because if we ask them, of course they will say, yes, we have a mission. Yes, we have a vision.
Yeah.
We have a vision of more prosperous Indonesia, for example, because all of those mining, the result from mining will be given to the society, for example. Of course, they can always say that. But if we need to check, right? But basically, if we claim that we have a good mission or vision, how can we tell that we actually have it, right? So first, actually, it is genuine questions whether what you are doing is actually for the goods of the society. I mean, in general, not only partial, not only good for this, but bad for those ones. So good for the society. But for second, what you are doing is not harming particular parties. So it is not neglecting particular parties. It is not actually ignoring. In the case of Papua, in my opinion, yes, from one perspective, it might be good for the economy. It will increase the growth of the economy and so on and so forth. But when you see, maybe not many, like 10, 20, 30 people actually neglected or marginalized because of that project, but you still do it, you don't have a vision. You don't have a good mission in this case. You don't have the core values. So you basically just ignoring or being selfish because you want to achieve this, and then you ignore those. I think that's basically what happens. How you can tell yourself that you actually have a good vision and mission.
So we're just trying to help as many, as large of a scope as possible, and we are not intentionally neglecting a certain marginalizement or something like that. But as engineers, we are bound to make mistakes. This is like sort of in the topic of beforehand. What if we've already, accidentally or unintentionally made a mistake that has like hurt a certain or a particular party? How do we correct that mistake, and how do we ensure that we don't make that mistake again in the future?
Very important. I think in general, what we have to do is to collaborate with as many parties as possible. Because whatever you think good for you is not necessarily good for others.
Yeah.
So in this case, that's why we need to listen to others, right? So when you have done something or you start to do something, it is most likely along the way that bad things will happen. But if you don't listen, you don't have the opportunity to fix it. So in my opinion, listen to others. And this has to be a procedure.
Okay, so we have steps.
You have steps.
Okay.
It's steps to listen to others, not only in the planning, but also in the execution. Because, okay, in many cases, you do this formally speaking. Like, okay, you consult with this, consult with that, you consult with society, and as long as you have this signature from them, you're good to go. The process might not be ideal, but at least you will focus more attention on the administrative aspects, because you have done 3-4 meetings with them. 3-4 meetings with them. I have the signature. That's it, right?
Yeah.
So that can also be the case, but along the way, you just have to do a similar thing when the execution is happening. So you need to listen to people. You need to regularly reevaluate that and let people to actually contribute into the ideas. And that first, and second, you just have to have the procedure once again to make a change along the way based on that evaluation. So it is not like you're fighting hard to justify what you're doing is right and then ignoring what the suggestions are, but genuinely listen to them and try to incorporate into the process, into the next step. While at the same time, I also understand it is not easy. But in my opinion, you just have to have that. Otherwise, things can be a lot worse. Even though, for example, okay, now I don't really get a lot of profit if I do this procedure because it is too complicated and it takes costs a lot of money. It is true, I know. But if you don't do that, it will cost you a lot larger in the future. Can you imagine now what happens to the mining in Raja Ampat when it becomes viral like this? It becomes attention, like global attention.
Yeah.
That can cost a lot more. Now, right? What happened, for example, if our friends in Europe, they just say, we stop importing those from Indonesia because of the procedure.
Yeah.
Right?
It would be even worse for our economy, actually. Yeah.
Because as engineers, we don't only have responsibility to our clients, but also to the civilization and the people.
That's very true. And I think we need also to basically ask our client to join force with us. But this is actually not about you and me only. But tell the story to them that is quite pragmatic. Okay. In the case of Raja Ampat, they might not want to hear about all those utopist ideas about a better life, whatever, or a better world. But say to them, hey, if you don't do this procedure, if this goes viral like this, you'll eventually lose your money.
Yeah.
Right. That is kind of a pragmatic kind of story and approach. But actually, we have a bigger umbrella that is actually for a good purpose.
So communicate with them in their language.
Correct. Communicating with them in their language. That's very true.
But what if they don't want to? Like, there are scenarios. Of course, like that is an optimistic look, and of course we all hope for it to be that way. But what if our sort of customers, stakeholders, they just don't want to compromise? What do we do then?
Okay. In an ideal situation, if we cannot really uphold our core values, that we cannot compromise, I better say no. If it doesn't, I better say no to that project. However, while we keep that core values, we just really need to work really, really hard to communicate. Because if you say that they don't want, that sounds like a final decision, but that might not be. The case might be is that they just don't see it yet from different perspective. So now, this is the bigger challenges for us actually. As an engineer, we cannot really focus on the technical aspects only. We focus on a broader aspect and also how to communicate. To understand and to know something is something, but to be able to communicate that is something else. So this is here now. First, as engineers, we need to learn a lot and also to involve other people, other disciplines to help us how to communicate, how to deliver this to people. So I'm still in a position that optimistic. So that even though it sounds like final, I don't want this, I still have the I still give the space over there. It might not be the final. You just don't understand that yet, and I will work a lot harder to convince you in such a way that you would understand that. So I will need to learn a lot.
Keisha, do you have any other additional questions? This has been a very great conversation and a podcast as well.
I think there's a lot of discussion and a lot of sort of thinking and questions that we all can do on our own, especially with our responsibility as engineers.
Wait, I actually have one final question to close out this sort of thing, because we've already talked about ethics, we've talked about our responsibilities as engineer mistakes. Now, for a final question, I want to take like an even deeper look into ourselves as engineers. What are some potential blind spots or weaknesses that even potentially the very most experienced of engineers might not even notice about themselves? How are we able to watch out for that?
Wow, that's very deep. I always believe that when you have a lot of experience, you'll do things better. When you learn a lot more, you'll do things better. I always believe that. Even though in the fast-changing world like this, once again, the risk of missing something is always there. I said earlier about the world is changing fast. We can see that as a problem, but at the same time, we can also see that as an opportunity. We covered it already. Now, with that situation, I would like to return it to the SWOT here. SWOT means SWOT is still there. We just need to be a lot more careful now to identify each of that. We covered that already. Now, what I want to advise is that in order for us to avoid that mistake or blind spot, we really need to change the weakness and threat into opportunity to grow. Okay? So meaning that now, if you understand better the weakness and threat, if you see it from a different perspective, you actually have a lot better reason to learn more and to grow, right? Because if you don't understand your weakness and threat, you might think that you don't have any reason to learn and to grow. So now in that case now, in order for you to avoid as much as possible the blind spot, you really need to pay attention to your weakness and threat, and then use that as a good reason to develop the way you learn. Because you might want to, or you might need to learn a lot harder now than once again 10 years ago or
20 years ago. So basically, we have to really identify our weakness and threat. We have to be able and want to understand it, and essentially be open to it in order for us to grow, and not pay attention in order to not be a major weakness. Okay.
And do a lot of learning.
Yes. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. This has been a very productive and a very fun experience to be able to sit here with Pa Andy and have a conversation about engineering and talking about recent cases as well. I think this is an appropriate time to close out this podcast. Thank you once again, everyone. My name is Calvin. I'm from Information Engineering, and with my co-host here, Keisha. Keisha, is there anything final you want to say before we close our podcast today?
I think probably just listen to a lot of the things that, we've learned today. It's not only for our exams, but also a lot of things that we have to consider for our future and how we work as engineers.
So, Pa Andy, thank you so much for the opportunity for today.
So much fun.
My pleasure.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Good luck for the final exams.